turn on the recording here. Sorry guys, this is the first time we've given this online, so we're still getting used to it here. So a couple things we wanted to go over before we get started. Just some Zoom etiquette. Please mute yourself, your line, whenever you're not speaking. If you guys can turn on your camera, if you're not in a place where you can, go ahead and you can leave it off. If you do want to comment or whatever, if you're in a position to be able to turn that camera on, it helps everyone feel more connected and know who everyone is and stuff like that. Throughout this presentation, we will be using the chat feature. We'll be using the polls. We may or may not use the breakout rooms, just depending on how many people show up. And when we get to that point, we'll go from there. And then if you would like to say something, you're welcome to unmute and speak. And then everyone just be mindful of the time. So this content here, you'll see here, it's based around this idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For those of you that are familiar with it, and what we're going to focus on tonight is mainly safety, connection, and confidence. We did a little introduction of ourselves. I do want to invite Cassie to introduce a little bit more about herself and her professional training in this regard.
So Dustin and I love being able to do this type of stuff together. And we're really passionate about it. I do have some professional experience. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I've been working for a dozen years or so, and have specifically focused my work working with young adults and teens, and specifically doing parent coaching, working with the parents and really helping the parents be aware of what they can be doing to help best support and shift some of their parenting when it comes to parenting teens and young adults. So that's kind of my experience and our experience here.
And then thank you. Everything we'll be teaching today was developed by a panel of local experts, mostly from Utah County and that area up there. This is an initiative, like I said, that United Way of Utah County has put out. One of the main program developers is a child psychiatrist, Dr. Matt Swenson, that is involved in the psychiatry division at Utah Valley Hospital up there. So we'll see a few videos from him today as we go through the content. So one of the main things that we want to talk about is a different way to approach how we look at situations with our children. And one of these studies that came out of Harvard talks about how it says, when confronted with the fallout of childhood trauma, why do some children adapt and overcome while others bear lifelong scars that flatten their potential? A growing body of evidence points to one common answer. Every child who winds up doing well has had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. So the main idea behind this training here is to show you how to develop those relationships, whether it be with your own children that you have or other children that are in your life.
Can I jump in and say something right
Sure.
now? So I don't know how many of you have heard of Josh Shipp. He's a great influencer working with teens. And he focuses a lot on the importance of this one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult. I wanted to add something though. He does a TED Talk that I feel like is really powerful, and he has some jars of marbles, and they're not actually very large jars, and each jar represents different periods of time, whether you have a 16-year-old or a 5-year-old, and the marbles in the jars represent each week of their life that you have with them to influence them. And when I think of this quote, I think of, yes, I know that I want to be that supportive, stable adult in my child's life. But when I take it a step further and ask myself, how well am I taking advantage of every single week? Because every week goes by and a marble is taken out of that jar. And for a 16-year-old, we only have like a little over 100 marbles left in the jar to be able to influence them. So just something that Josh Shipp brings up that I like to be able to remind myself when I think of this quote. Thanks. Really drifted.
So the objectives we're going to cover today, like we said, we want to approach kind of a new way to think about children's mental health and specifically their behavior. We're going to teach this very simple framework of how to clarify concerns with your child, and we're going to learn how to apply the framework to improve our relationships. One of the reasons that I really like this is because it is so simplistic to apply. I feel like as a parent, Cassandra and I have 4 kids. Our 5-year-old is our oldest kid. So we've got 4 kids, 5 and under. So life gets a little crazy. We've spent a lot of time studying different parenting techniques and everything else. But when you get into the heat of a situation or a moment, sometimes it's hard to remember those different things that you've learned. What we really love about this is that it allows you to have this really simplistic framework.
Okay, so on the Facebook group, I posted this Sharp survey information. Sharp survey is the Student Health and Risk Prevention survey that they do every 2 years for, I think, 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade, I think, is how often they do it. And so we're seeing almost in 8 years, we're seeing almost a doubling of the children self-reporting that they're struggling with basically depression. And so we'd like to ask you, we'd like to encourage you to take the opportunity to use the chat. And we want to get into a little bit about what you might think or what you've heard talked about that impacts this mental health struggle that we're seeing in the youth. We'd love to get some of your opinions.
And while you're in there in the chat too, something we're going to ask is if you could just post the ages of your children that you have, so we can kind of get an idea of what people have in their lives.
So again, just to clarify, we'd love to hear any thoughts that you have about why we're seeing this increase in struggles with mental health, specifically attributes of depression in our youth. And then we'd love to know your kids' ages. Okay. So we have 9, 7, 4, 1 on the way. Congratulations. 13, 11, 8, 5. Okay. Okay.
Bryce has a kindergartner, it looks like. And some of the things that people posted online when we put this up in the Facebook group were things like social media. We hear a lot about that. What other things do you guys think could be something that's contributing to this increase?
Okay. So hold on. Do we want to go back to
what?
To just this screen? Okay, thanks. So here's some things to be thinking about. Okay, great. We're getting responses coming in. So I think the fast-paced, technology-obsessed world we live in contributes. I would guess some form of social distancing, urban sprawl. Yeah. Less time letting kids roam. Family strengths may be decreasing. Fast-paced, high-stress society, social media, depleted diet, lack of slowing down, taking time to be just quiet and still. And an increase in adult anxiety and depression may be contributing to children feeling less stable. Okay, beautiful. Love it. All these different things and lots of validity to all of those great ideas. And these little icons just show, of course, social media, video games, iPad games come up.
There's even been some study that came out of the University of Utah talking about how elevation and different levels above sea level and stuff like that can affect depression.
Yeah, and affect our serotonin levels and decrease of oxygen and how that impacts our brain. All these different things. So we want to just keep that in mind for a second, and we're going to we want to bring up a metaphor to talk about. So if any of you are runners, marathon runners, let's talk a little bit about this. If there's someone wanting to run a marathon, but they're failing at it, they're struggling at it, what do you think are things that might be impacting their struggle or feeling like they're failing in being able to run that marathon that they want to? So we'd love for you to enter into the chat any things that you think might be impacting. Or if you've struggled trying to run yourself, what are those things that you struggle with?
So Bryce says time to train. So Jamie, the question is, if you wanted to run a marathon, or if someone you knew wanted to run a marathon and couldn't, what is the reason why they fell? So let's go through a few reasons here why somebody might fail at running a marathon. And really the idea of this, I think you'll start to realize how we can apply this to mental health. So a reason why somebody might fail at it is biological. Maybe they need more sleep. Maybe they're just out of shape. We've got psychological reasons. Sometimes, I don't know about you guys, when I've been on a long run before, sometimes I give up mentally long before I give up physically. If I'm in a good mental place, I can keep going. But if I've had a hard day or a hard week or something, it's really hard for me to go in and keep running. Maybe there's a level of spirituality there. Maybe somebody's training for, or somebody's is struggling spiritually and it affects how they're able to perform physically. Do you want to cover some of this?
Yeah, I am. Or social. Maybe they don't have someone to go run with, someone motivating them, encouraging them along the way. That could be an aspect of it.
Jamie says they might not have conditioned their bodies the right way, lack of time, etc.
Mm-hmm. Or educational. Conditioning, sometimes being able to condition our bodies is also, we need to be educated on that and realize the different things that we need to be able to know to be able to help us better condition our bodies and prepare it the way that we could. Or environmental, focusing on conditions of clothing, weather, timing, environmental timing, that's my big one.
So any of these reasons could be the cause or a cause of why somebody might fail at that. Now, if we look at this in terms of an anxious or a depressed child, we can see that a lot of these factors apply also. So when we look at things in terms of trying to find like the primary cause why kids are more anxious today or depressed today than they were 8 or 9 years ago, we can miss out on recognizing that there may be a lot of things going on. And if we focus on one thing, we might miss a whole lot of other things.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I think it's, as a therapist, parents will often come and say, okay, what's going on here? Like, is it this diagnosis? Is that is the issue? Trying to really spend a lot of time getting into what is the issue and wanting to fix that problem. And I think that that's something that's really permeated how we see mental health concerns. Rather, if we're able to take a step back and say, okay, like, social media, that's a big issue. That's what's impacting my daughter's depression. Okay, well, let's look at that social media. It's probably, if she's up late at night, then it's probably impacting her sleep. It's also impacting her psychologically because of how she compares to other people and her own confidence levels. But maybe it's also impacting feeling connected to her higher power or feeling less connected to our higher power. It definitely can impact her socially in different ways. And then it impacts her ability to cope if she's using it as an avoidance factor. So as we get into these things, we see that really it's really multifactorial when we're getting into different things. So many different facets to consider.
So another question to think about is, how can you help someone if you don't know what's causing the problem? What are your thoughts on this? You just put in the chat, or feel free to unmute if you want to unmute and share something. So Bryce says listening is a great way to start. I think that's an awesome response. Bryn says be a safe place. Listen without judgment. Awesome. Bryn, it's like you're leading us right into the where we're headed here.
Where we want to be. Well done.
Did you have anything you wanted to cover on those?
No. Let's go ahead and well, actually,
Jamie says practice empathy.
I like it. I think especially in parenting, it's easy to get this focus of trying to see what the problem is. And we talk a lot, even as moms, we'll sit around at the park with our kids and talk a lot about what the problems are, what we're struggling with. And we get really focused on what's the problem and how can we correct the problem. So what's interesting about that is that we are taking more of this reactive approach of focusing on the problem and then reacting to the problem and trying to fix it, rather than being able to help things go right. And that's the power of this when Maslow's hierarchy comes into play. Really, what we'd like to focus on instead is focus on what our kids need, rather than getting so caught up in what the problems are. But hey, what is it that they need to be able to be successful? I don't know, raise of hands or thumbs up of whoever is familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay.
Bryn says yes. Bryce says yes.
Okay, great.
Jamie says yes.
Great. So this will be pretty familiar to some, but we've actually simplified it a little bit to just clarify in our minds. The bottom talks about physical needs. We know that when our kids, and luckily our school system has been able to support this. We know that the kids need to be able to eat breakfast in the morning and have their physical needs met before being able to come to school and to be able to concentrate. But then we also go from there, our safety. What our kids need are safety, they need connection, and they need confidence. And that when those needs are met, then their ability to be able to thrive, to self-actualize and become who they're capable of becoming and who they want to be, and to be able to thrive, their needs need to be met. Did you want to say something? Or so just for examples for safety, we know that we need to be physically safe, But we also want to really look at, are they safe to talk? Is my child safe to explore in my home? Are they safe to explore at school? Are they safe to separate? Are they safe to fail? Are they safe to be themselves? And are they safe to be able to feel?
So as we go through this hierarchy, one of the things that we've kind of taken to approach, where our little boy, Caden, who's our kindergartner, he's pretty sensitive. For example, if he hasn't eaten, and it's easy if he hasn't eaten in a while to have him get frustrated and have him blow up or hit or different things like that. And we could easily focus on the behavior. But if we kind of go through this pyramid as we're trying to figure out what's going on, we've noticed that how much it helps. So if we focus on his physical needs, well, is he tired? Has he eaten? And if those things are covered, is he feeling safe right now? Or is he feeling connected or a lack of connection? And as we kind of go through this, it's amazing how when we focus on this, how those behaviors will subside. Did you want to talk about the story with the connection?
Yeah. I think it's, I want to share a story. So I've been meeting with teens for years and years, and I had a really supportive family, a husband and wife that came in. They were very dedicated, every single week coming in with their teen boy who was struggling with multiple different things: aggression in the home, being addicted to video games, staying up really late through the night, really struggling with sleep patterns. And so they came in, had all these lists of what the problems were there to be able to support him. And what was interesting, though, is that the parents were trying to be supportive, but they were trying to talk to him about skills of coping with his anger, skills of being able to manage his time, skills of better sleep, like sleep and physical exercise patterns. But what was interesting is when I spent time being able to talk with this young man, really what he was missing, he didn't have an ability to be able to focus on all these great supportive skills that his parents were trying to teach him, that actually was more on the confidence level. Building skills and being successful in those skills is more on that confidence level, so that there was a lot of focus there. But really what he was needing was safety. He didn't feel safe opening up and talking to his parents. He didn't feel safe feeling the way that he was feeling, and felt really judged for his struggles. The parents were not happy with his addiction and focus on video games. But after talking with his father, the father made a shift and decided to try to connect more with his son. So he sat down and played video games with his son. And with that, the son started to be able to feel less judgment. He started to open up and talk with his dad more. And then his dad was able to then look beyond the layers to see the positive intent and the needs that the boy was getting fulfilled through those games, the mental stimulation, the strategy, the sense of confidence that he was obtaining from being successful in the video games. And it was because the father was willing to get back to those lower levels of the pyramid of safety and connection that he was eventually able to get to the place. Then they could have more of those discussions and building healthy life skills and confidence once the lower needs were met of safety and connection. All starts with safety.
So we're going to watch this video real quick. It just goes through a little bit of what we just talked about. Let me know if in the chat if you guys have any problems seeing or hearing it.
Across the nation, more and more teens are struggling with anxiety and depression. Why? There are lots of theories: social media, increased social pressures, biological and environmental factors. The list is long. But the truth is, experts don't know the exact cause. There's a lot that goes into why somebody struggles. So how can you help someone with anxiety or depression if you don't know what's causing the problem? Well, You can focus on what they need. Maslow's hierarchy of needs forms the basis of most modern psychology. They include safety, connection, and confidence. So what do we mean by safety? It means that you're safe to talk, safe to be yourself. Do our kids feel safe to fail? Safe to feel? How do you communicate that it's okay to feel strong emotions? Connection. How do kids feel connected? Parents do all kinds of big things to create memorable moments with their kids, but it's the simple moments that create the most important connections. A smile, a shared joke, or really just looking at your child. It's that feeling of being seen and appreciated. And here's a little psychological pearl of wisdom. If you're stuck and you don't know how to connect, just say that. Finally, confidence. It's all about growth. Our kids, and even some adults, think that their life is all about performance and that it's not about progress. Kids will say things like, I'm really stressed out. I'm in ninth grade now, and ninth grade counts. They feel they've already become who they're going to become, and from now on, everything they do is going to be measured, and there's no opportunity to grow. Sometimes the best way to help a child feel confident is to express confidence. Say things like, you've got this, you'll figure this out. Give yourself some time, be patient, see the long road. Safety, connection, confidence. Our needs are universal. So instead of looking at anxiety and depression as a problem that needs to be solved by figuring out what's wrong with the world, what's wrong in society, stop and see the person standing in front of you. Figure out what they need. When needs are met, we all thrive.
Okay. Well, I love this framework, and we want to be able to get into applying it. I would love for you to be able to consider, as we're going through this application of trying to apply these principles, to be thinking about how you want to apply these principles with the children in your lives, and just being able to take one little thing that you would like to do differently at the end of this discussion, and to be able to implement that. So let's practice. Let's talk about an example of May. May is a fourth grader who has shown low frustration tolerance and even some aggression repeatedly over the past several weeks. She threw a volleyball at a peer's face and a pen across the classroom at her teacher. So what are some ideas that you guys have of how we could care for her physical needs, help her feel safe, connect with her, and build her confidence and skills? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And feel free, you can chat or unmute.
I can share something. I was just thinking, if she were my daughter, then I would, go through those steps to think, okay, is she getting enough nutrition or food or whatever, like her physical, and is she getting enough sleep or whatever. Think about those physical needs. Because I totally agree that those make a big difference for kids, no matter what age they are at. And then, just maybe talk to her about, I would maybe even just say out loud, say directly, do you feel like you can talk to me or us about like anything you want, or do you not feel, you know what I mean? Like, try and get an honest answer about that. And maybe she would, or maybe she wouldn't. And if she wouldn't, then obviously some changes need to be made in kind of the parenting environment or family environment, but especially parents, just in the willingness to be able to listen and without judgment, allow her to feel what she feels, even if, we think it's silly or, whatever reason, And then the connection, I think, is such a huge one because kids aren't getting, I mean, I think a lot of kids, like even our kids who we try to connect with every day, they just always need more, always. Like, it's like we can't connect enough with them ever, so there's just a lot of different ways to do that. And I think every kid kind of, to me, it kind of just like those love languages. Every kid, especially likes certain ways of connecting, so discovering those ways. And anyway, I didn't mean to go through all. I'll let somebody else talk about that last
No,
one.
thanks. I want to highlight, I love that you're checking in with even really young kids, for you to check in with them and say, hey, how safe, how open do you feel in being able to share with me your feelings, and being able to be open to that feedback and not react, just hear whatever they have to say and just to hold that. What a great place to be able to have an opportunity, or opening up the opportunity to reinforce that they're safe by just asking that question and checking with them. Love it.
Something, Anne, too, that kind of stuck out to me as you were speaking, you mentioned it applying to any age. And what's interesting is if we think about this with ourselves, how often it applies. So if maybe I'm feeling agitated, or maybe I'm like more reactive with my kids, right? Have I slept well? Maybe I just need to go take a nap. Have I eaten today? I am not a good eater by any shape of the means. I can go hours and hours and hours without eating. And then sometimes when I come home, I'll tend to be a little more agitated. So, or, am I feeling safe in my communication with my spouse? Different things like that. So it's not just something we can apply to our kids, but it's something we can apply to ourselves too.
Yeah. There was a comment I think from Bryce: start by seeing if she has food to eat at school. Ask if she is sleeping. I had a lot of students with food and shelter insecurity back in Omaha. Yeah. Those basic needs are being provided for and considered, it helps us be a lot more compassionate, especially when dealing with problems, when we can keep those in mind. I love Dr. Matt Swenson has some of the most difficult situations brought to him as a head psychiatrist. And he says that anytime a kid is in his office, he immediately goes back to these three things. Well, physical needs, but then safety, connection, and confidence. So if we do that same thing, and just being able to have this simple framework, not only with our kids of, okay, if there's a problem, what am I doing to help provide for their physical needs, their safety, connection, confidence, and then in our relationships with other people, like with a spouse or other people in your life, it's great to be able to say, okay, how am I feeling on my safety level? How am I feeling on my connection level? How am I feeling in my confidence level? And what can we do to better provide for those needs? Okay. This is an interesting quote. Human beings are like plants to nourish, not animals to train. At first, when I first read this, I was like, but I thought about it. As plants, when we trust plants, right? If I provide nourishment for this plant, then I know if my nourishment is right, if I give it some good soil, some sun, water, then it can build its root system up. And I know, and I can trust that it's going to survive. And I think sometimes we struggle to trust as human beings, but if we're able to interact with our children and interact with others and trust them, that if their needs are being met and we're doing what little bit we can, or what large bit we can to be able to help provide for those needs, being able to trust that they will thrive and that they will grow when we are willing to do that.
So here's another video that's going to talk a little bit about these concepts. This is from Dr. Swenson here. So I'll go ahead and play this. Let me know again if you're having any problems.
Good. The other implication of this pyramid is you have to trust that when you meet a person's needs, they will thrive. And that requires a little bit of faith, because often the problem seems here and you have to back up and say, I'm just going to look at this person and say, how are we doing with their needs? Physical needs, safety, connection, confidence. Is there some way that I could just help with one of those things? And it might not feel like you're directly tackling whatever you think the problem is, but you have to believe that if you'll just sort of attend to those needs and get out of the way and have a little bit of faith in people, that they will self-actualize. It's up to us.
Good. It's up to us. Each one of us can help provide for other people's needs. And as we put that positive energy out, then when other people's needs are met, then they're able to be more aware of helping other people thrive as well. So let's shift our lens a little bit. Nathan, is someone willing to read this little excerpt about Nathan?
Sure, I'll read it.
Thanks, Bryn.
Nathan is a teen who recently announced his intention to drop out of school, in part because he doesn't see any path to graduation due to excessive school absences and failed classes. School administrators say he is often found with friends who skip class and smoke weed.
Okay.
So if someone else is willing to chime in, or Bryn, if you want to chime in, what normally happens to a kid like Nathan? In a school setting, in a parent setting, what normally would happen?
Unfortunately, I think there can often be a lot of blame placed on the kid, a lot of judgment placed on the kid. Unfortunately, maybe even some shame placed on the kid to try and change that behavior. It's not very effective.
A lot of pressure. When you're even saying those words, I start to feel this pressure. And children and youth, I think sometimes we underestimate how much pressure they're already feeling, but all of that, the blame, the judgment, the shame just adds to that pressure.
And Janice commented he drops out, sometimes runs away. Also, like, he may get suspended, right? As far as the way that school administrators might handle something. So here's another clip real quick. We're gonna watch talking a little bit more about Nathan.
Nathan came in and I kind of went into my pyramid mode, and I was thinking, okay, well, it sounds like he just doesn't do well in school, but let's start at the bottom. And I said, well, how are you sleeping? Not very well, actually. So we talked about that. Are you eating well? I've gained 10 pounds in the last 6 months. Getting anything for exercise? No. And so we kind of start processing, and I say, maybe we could work on some of these things, get a little more sunshine. And he's kind of still got his head down. And I said, I really want to know how you're feeling about dropping out of high school. Can we talk about that? And we continued to talk, and I think I was doing my very best. All I was thinking in my mind is, how do I be safe? How do I not judge him? How do I not fix this? How do we sort of figure out how to collaborate? And at some point, Nathan started just crying, and I had no idea why. These tears. And he said, Dr. Swenson, for the last 2 weeks, I've driven to school. I've sat in my car in the parking lot for 6 hours, and then I've driven home. Because he's too anxious to face the school administrators, too overwhelmed to talk to his parents or to drop out. He was devastated. And I felt so grateful to be the first person he told that to. And I thanked him. And we made a lot of progress after that, moving him forward, talking about his relationships, and then putting together a plan for school, which he did go back and he did graduate. But he just needed a safe place. He needed a safe place to talk.
A quick thought about that. I think that approach really takes off the pressure and allows our children to be able to be safe and being able to share what they need. Something that's that's important to remember. This program is called EveryDay Strong. The goal is to be able to build resiliency. And I love that Dr. Swenson talks in there about he wasn't there to fix the problem, because often kids personalize that of, well, if we're fixing the problem, that means something's wrong with me and that I need to be fixed. But rather than teaching kids this mentality about life, that the problems have to be fixed in order for us to be okay, that there has to be these certain outcomes for us to be sufficient or worth, rather than being able to say, hey, we don't have to focus so much on fixing the problem. We can learn to be okay with where things are at and to be able to build in and provide for our needs and have faith that things will continue to grow from there. So motivation versus ability. There is a little metaphor that I'd like to be able to bring up, a baseball metaphor. I want you to think about this. Imagine you're a kid up to bat and you're trying to hit a baseball, and your coach tells you, if you don't hit this baseball, you'll fail gym class. Then you swing and you miss. Then your dad comes out and says, if you hit this baseball, I'll give you $100. And you swing and you miss. Then all of your friends come out and they're cheering for you. All this positive energy and peer culture, and you're motivated as heck. You have a negative consequence, you have a positive consequence, and you have your peers rooting for you. But you still swing and you miss. This is the question. Why did you miss the ball? Was it because you just didn't care enough? Any thoughts about how that applies to our kids? Often,
I think, oh,
sorry, please.
I was just gonna say, sometimes we just fail, like, period. Like all of us, all the time, will just have failing. We don't accomplish everything we want to do, and that's like totally normal. And that is that's actually a major thing with a certain person in our family, one of our children. They have a really, this perfectionism, and like I'm sure she gets it from me. I'm perfectionist too, but even with the perfectionism that plagues me, I have learned over the years and decades of my life that that it's like okay, that like I won't always get everything, I do everything, accomplish everything, whatever. And so I've been struggling to try to teach that, because this child is like not okay with failing, with messing up, whatever. And but anyway, that's one thing specifically that I've been trying to teach, is that it just happens. Like it's just part of life. It's totally normal, completely normal, and totally fine to mess up, to fail, to not accomplish every goal maybe, or whatever. So just it's a literal fact of life that, to teach that failure is a part of life and a completely great, fine part of life.
Yeah. Thank you. Being able to change and shift our lens and how we see failure. Yeah, thanks. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, I like that this says, when is motivation not enough? When a person isn't able to do the thing they want to do. Kids want to succeed. We want to succeed, right? We get that perfectionism. We really do have a lot of motivation and desire to get somewhere. But really, what's most motivating is first being able to seek that safety, those physical needs, the safety, the connection, and the confidence before we're at a level that we can really achieve and thrive. So rather than focusing on that tip of the pyramid, the thriving first, and trying to push ourselves there, if we can focus on those lower pieces and getting those needs met, then, and being compassionate with ourselves and others, then that helps us be able to figure what we can put into our life to help us get our needs met so that we can thrive and achieve.
And like the analogy there, or like this slide points out, when is motivation not enough? When a person isn't able to do the thing that they want to do, right? And so going back to this idea of have we equipped them with the tools that they need to be able to handle this situation? And sometimes we have to take a step back and focus on that.
There's a comment, resiliency, the way we fail is important. I teach failing to my voice students so that they can seek it out to hone their art making. Focusing on their attitude and motivation is much better than their ability. Love it, love it. And failing is an important piece of learning if we're not being okay with that failure. Okay, love it.
So I think we're running a little short on time here, so we'll go ahead and skip the breakout, but we'll talk here about this. This is just kind of another practice here, and we're almost wrapped up here.
Yeah. So just another example to kind of think about, if anyone has any quick thoughts to share. Julia is a 17-year-old whose behavior is increasingly difficult for her parents to manage. She refuses to follow rules, is falling behind in her classes, and isn't attending church with the family. Her dress seems increasingly inappropriate. Family relationships are tense. So any ideas of what you would think of doing at the different levels to care for Julia's need? And being careful not to focus too much on things that we do not have control over.
My initial thought when I read that is that these are maybe important to the people around her, right? How she dresses, or if she's attending church, or her grades, or the rules at home. And so I would start with what her,
We're losing you a little bit, Anne.
right? Yeah. What's it maybe or her?
Oh, sorry. I think we're losing you. You're breaking up. Yeah, and this scenario could be anything. You could be Julia's parents. You could be a supportive person at school, in their environment. I think what was being said was a little bit about relationships, that if family relationships are tense, then that probably means that safety isn't there. And so being able to make sure to address those physical needs and the safety starting with the relationships is a great point of entry.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
Okay.
So we're going to share this video real quick on kind of what it feels like to experience depression and anxiety.
Kids who are hungry for safety, connection, and confidence every day, like they're not their best selves.
I felt left out.
I didn't feel self-worth, really.
I think a good way to describe it would be like something kind of stuck in your throat and it's like slowly making its way up. Like I'm feeling it now because it's like kind of a stuck, like you're in between something.
Or a cracked phone in a world full of nice phones. They're like, oh, what happened? And you don't know. It's just, I dropped it. I need help.
There's always a reason behind somebody's behavior. Many children are struggling more than they used to with anxiety and depression. What we're discovering is that some of the solutions may actually be simple acts in our everyday life that help a child feel safe, feel connected, and feel confident. The simple premise is everyday strong.
Who could they be if they did have those things? They would be the best version of themselves, right? Because when you feel good, you self-actualize. That's kind of a crazy big word. I don't know where that just came from, but it's that idea that they do what you would want them to do or what they can do because they can.
Most people, I think, feel sad because they're not understood.
It's not doing harsh discipline, it's having consistent communication.
Just talking and feeling that no one's going to laugh at them. No one's going to think that they're weird.
Oh, I'm okay, and this is normal, and this does happen to other people.
And looking for opportunities to engage them, to say, wow, job well done. Help build their confidence in who they are.
Something that they know is a fact. Today I was good at that one thing and somebody noticed.
Then suddenly the tree starts to thrive again because they're not in their little dark room alone.
They feel like, okay, I've got people around me, I've got some help, I'm gonna be okay. It was fun to see that transformation, and it took a long time, but I knew she was a different person the day she said hi to me before I even saw her. But I got tears in my eyes.
You know, you take these little opportunities and you find out how big they are. I look into their faces and I know their struggles. And I know what they're fighting for. And to see that light click on in them was absolutely priceless.
If all of us ask ourselves, what did we do today to help that child feel safe? What did we do to help that child feel connected? And what did we do to help that child feel confident?
I feel like that's the easiest, shortest to-do list, and it's fail-proof.
If we use that as a measurement of our lives of interacting with so many of our children and young adults, we really can turn the corner on this very complex and challenging problem.
You can help them help themselves, which is what we want our kids to be able to do.
Everybody has a role to play. Okay, what can I do?
So while we just wrap up, we have a quote that we'd like to share. And I love that line of it's the most simple, shortest to-do list. As parents, our list can get really long, or as support people in our children's lives. But if every day we can think about what's something that I'm doing to help the children in my life feel more safe, connected, and confident, I would love it if parents would ask themselves every day, what can I do to help the children in my life feel safe, connected, and confident? When we meet their needs, we're building resilient kids.
Yeah, I just want to add in there, if you kind of take something away from this, it's that phrase, safe, connected, and confident. When we don't know what to do, when maybe the heat of the moment is on with our kids, just think about this idea of how do I help them feel safe? How do I help them feel connected? How do I help them feel confident?
So we would love it if you were willing to take an opportunity to be able to follow us on social media through Facebook or Instagram. What's not just to follow, but we've tried to repeat these things over and over again in this 1 hour presentation, but if you follow on Instagram, then they send out weekly reminders of little suggestions on how to implement things that can help increase sense of safety, connection, and confidence. So if you'd like some more reminders in your life down the road, then this is a great way to access those. There's also, do we have a link here for the handbook? Yeah. If you go to everydaystrong.org, you can get a copy. You can download a copy of this resilience handbook. And in it, there's a handful of suggestions for each level of safety, connection, and confidence, of little things that you could be doing to help implement more of this feeling of safety, connection, and confidence. So just like some little what to do and whys, little suggestions.
And that's it.
Yeah. Thank you guys for your comments, for your time. Keep up the great work that you are doing.
Anybody have any questions or thoughts before we go?
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.